We answer viewer questions about used cars, give some rear-wheel drive picks, and talk about our first experiences with the new Honda Civic Si. Next on Talking Cars. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Mike Monticello.
I'm Mike Quincy.
And I'm not Mike, I'm Jake Fisher.
That's true. We got a lot of response from our last episode that dealt with used cars. So I want to get right to viewer questions. And there's one here that deals directly with it. And this person says, I'm surprised that the only used SUV recommended was the Ford Flex. This is a huge market. Are there any other SUVs that you might recommend? Now, actually, they did talk about another SUV. You guys also talked about the Acura MDX. But they weren't really, you guys weren't really doing categories of cars. You were doing more prices. So that's one of the reasons why you didn't bring up SUVs. But there are a lot of used SUVs that are good. Mike, do you want to start with some picks that you would say would be a good used SUV?
Absolutely. I mean, when I'm thinking used cars, I'm always going to err to the side of reliability. So take a vehicle that maybe didn't ace our tests all the time, but has been proven to stand up strong. So I'm thinking about a Lexus GX. Kind of flies under the radar. Kind of truck-based. I mean, not the most refined vehicle in terms of a ride, but has got great Toyota reliability. And on the same token, the Toyota 4Runner. Again, not a vehicle that we necessarily always love because it is truck-based. It is, rear-wheel drive usually, unless you put it in four-wheel drive. But it holds up well over time, and that to me is the key part about buying a used car.
Yeah, I mean, when you're buying a used car, one of the main things is,
they're kind of crazy picks. I mean, I'm looking at Jake's face. He's like, can you tell that? Recommend.
They are a little crazy
right.
picks, and we expect that from you. We expect a little something different from Mike Quincy. Jake, do you have anything more mainstream that you want to recommend?
I completely agree with Mike. No, I don't.
No, he doesn't.
So, I mean, look, those, I mean, Mike's right. Those are reliable picks, but come on. I mean, unless you're going up a mountain and you got to go off-roading or you got to tow something big, generally people should stay away from those because there are lots of other reliable picks, right? I mean, you could get, CR-Vs and RAV4s until the cows come home. They're all over the place and they're much cheaper. But I would like to get into the fact that why weren't we recommending SUVs? I mean, we all know everyone likes SUVs and everyone's buying lots of new SUVs, and that's the market. There's a reason why. And the reason why is because you could get a lot more for your money in the used car market if you go to cars. Because those SUVs, because there's such a demand for them, they hold their value. So, I mean, I picked the Mazda 6. Well, you know why? Because it doesn't hold its value that well, even though it's reliable and it does a lot of good things. So in the used car market, sometimes you want to get that car that wasn't that popular, and you could get a lot for your money.
So more for your money, you go with the car, is what you're saying.
You get more for your money when you go for the car, but I mean, certainly.
But you're kind of fighting against the tide. Whether or not cars are more sensible, there certainly are. We know that. But it's what people want. Okay, there I'll agree with you, but the issue there is that if you're looking for a 3-year-old CR-V or you're looking for a 3-year-old RAV4, you know what? You might even want to consider a new one because the delta there, the change in price is not that great. Whereas if you're looking for a 3-year-old sedan, wow, they've really dropped a lot in value, and then you get a lot more value. Can't argue with that.
Do you guys want to hear my picks?
No.
Okay.
No. Go for it.
I'm barely here. So, I mean, I picked kind of some of the ones that you touched on, Honda CR-V. Of course, Toyota Highlander. I mean, you really can't go wrong. I actually recently recommended a Highlander. Someone was buying a used SUV. They were thinking about Highlander. I said, don't even think, just get it. It's the reliability is that good.
That's the Consumer Reports advice.
Don't
think.
Don't think. Just buy it.
But like what Jake says, the prices are going to be, you're going to pay through the nose of that,
but I'm gonna
or it's going to have 200,000.
I'm going to throw something else out there that I came across when I was just doing a little bit of research. Toyota Venza. Now, the Toyota Venza is one of those weird vehicles.
Hey.
It's not great to drive, and you're not sure, is it an SUV? Is it a tall wagon? I mean, really, is it a station wagon? It's really a tall wagon. But this is a vehicle that has really strong reliability, and you can get them for as low as 11 grand. And a friend of mine actually bought one. She does a lot of outdoor stuff, so she can throw her mountain bike in there anytime she wants. And so that's just something that I think a lot of people, it's not on people's radar.
Why the Venza is such a cool pick, because again, it's that against the tide. When it goes to used cars, you want to get the car that's good, that isn't in demand. And sometimes, we sometimes talk about the most overlooked vehicles, and we talk like, here's cars you're not interested in. No one cares what we're talking about. But it's like on the used car market, suddenly, I mean, what are some of the cars that we talk like the Kia Cadenza and some of these cars that like nobody really knew about or cared about? The used car market, they're not worth anything, and they're a lot for their money.
One of these things we do, the cars that fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Every episode of Talking Cars.
But the used car market, they get really smart.
Yeah. All right, so let's get to another question. This person says, guys, I love the new look of the show. Now, we didn't pick this question just because they said something nice about us.
Yeah, we did.
Okay, actually we did. But so, guys, I love the new look. Love the new look of the show, and I look to you guys all the time. Question: I'm looking for a good rear-wheel drive car that's both reliable and fun to drive. Any suggestions? Now, the person didn't actually specify new or used or even a price range, but I would say the answer is always Fiat 124. No, I'm kidding. What I was really going to say was the answer is always Mazda Miata. This is a fun little car. It's especially good as a used car because it's really, as shown to be, really reliable. It's a very small car, though, but it's really fun to drive. Doesn't have a lot of power, but I mean, it's really hard to go wrong with that car. You guys got some other
Well, first of all, I gotta correct you because it's actually Miata is always the answer. It's an acronym. That's what they. Actually,
I feel like I'm always wrong with this guy.
Just usually.
That's why he's the boss.
But yeah, I mean Miata's. But we don't have enough to go on here. I mean rear-wheel drive. I mean we're talking pickup truck, sports car. I mean we had a bunch of really good rear-wheel drive choices when we talked about used cars, old Infinitis, right? The
Infiniti G.
The G37, the M37. Those are good cars. I mean you could go old. I mean I don't know. I'd probably wind up with like a 90s MR2 turbo, which is rear-wheel drive, but it's like there's so many things there. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I didn't know how to take the question. Was it new? Was it used?
Right.
And I was thinking reliable and rear-wheel drive and fun to drive. That's a tough combination. And the first one that I came up with, again, a car not necessarily popular with us, but was the Lexus IS. I mean, rear-wheel drive, great reliability, terrible cockpit, no leg room for the driver, terrible ergonomics.
I loved the first generation.
First generation, one of my all-time favorites. The straight six and all that.
Yeah,
it was a great car. So that kind of took care of the reliability part of it. The more fun to drive for rear-wheel drive is a 3 Series, but that could be a money pit, especially if you're buying used.
How about a BMW 2 Series? I mean, that has shown strong reliability, stronger than the 3 Series, and that's a really fun to drive little car. You can get the 230i or you can get the M240i. I mean, that's a decent car, but it's not cheap though. That's the only thing. You're going to spend some money to get that.
And you got to hand it to some of the domestic manufacturers. I mean, the Dodge Charger still rear-wheel drive, Cadillac ATS, excellent rear-wheel drive, but reliability nightmares. So the crowning one, and this is a kind of a pun here, the crowning one for rear-wheel drive,
Crown Vic.
An old Crown Vic.
Oh, geez.
Yes, that's it. Not fun to drive.
Always comes up with the weird ones, doesn't he?
Or if you're feeling crazy, a Mercury Marauder.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna let that go.
All kinds of.
We're gonna move on from there. But what about what a lot of friends that I have with Miatas have actually switched to the Honda S2000 because they wanted the extra power.
Sure.
It's a little more car. Instead of trying to turbocharge your Miata, which can be a bit of a nightmare to have it still work properly after you keep it cooled after you turbocharge it.
Let's take the one thing about the Miata that's universal. It's really reliable.
Right.
Let's throw a turbocharger.
Let's mess that up.
I did it, and it, was a handful. But the S2000, I mean, that's one of the world's greatest transmissions in there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Would you recommend that car to someone for a fun rear-wheel drive car?
Absolutely. I mean, if you're okay putting up with the ride, but I mean, you're really looking for something sporty, that car is amazing, especially the early ones that rev to 9,000 RPM.
I know you really like the first generation, but even the second one still revved to 8,000. I mean, that's still...
It doesn't go to 9 though.
Nine
is more than 8.
It's all about 9.
But super noisy.
Yeah.
Even on the highway when you're in the top gear.
It's a serious machine.
It screams at you. I remember buying the last one for our test program and driving it back from the dealer. and I was just astounded at how loud it was.
I love that car though.
So good.
I took it to some track days, and it was just fantastic.
It's like driving like a sport bike on the street.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
It also shows you that Honda once knew how to build really, really interesting and cool cars.
What about the Subaru BRZ and Scion FRS, or now Toyota 86? The reliability has only proven to be average, but I mean, these are fun little cars.
Yeah, they are. I mean, if you're looking for new, they're not that expensive.
Right.
There's not a whole lot of choices in that market, in that price range, unless you go for Miata.
When we have track days and an 86 or BRZ is available, it's always my first choice because you get everything out of it. It doesn't overwhelm you like a Miata. It doesn't overwhelm you with power, but the balance of it is phenomenal.
When it gets to its limits, it's still controllable.
Yeah,
and that's what you want.
You know exactly. You know exactly what you're going to get. I think if I was freshly minted out of college, first car, no kids, no house, no responsibilities, that car would be probably top on my list.
Yeah.
At this point, having like teenage boys in the house and dog house and the whole nightmare, it doesn't fit my life at all. But on a track, first choice.
Yeah. Okay, let's stick with a used car theme. Here's someone who says, I currently own a 2007 Honda Accord, and I'm looking at used minivans. I like all-wheel drive, so I was looking at the Toyota Sienna. In my area, it's hard to spend $28,000 on a used Sienna when I could just get a Chrysler Town Country with snow tires for half the cost. What's your opinion? Is the Sienna worth twice as much money? And is a minivan with snow tires just as good in Western Pennsylvania, that's where this person lives, as all-wheel drive? What do you think about that?
Well, first of all, I mean, snow tires, right? I mean, or winter tires. So, I mean, they make a big difference in terms of safety, right? They're going to help you stop. They're going to help you turn.
Even if you have all-wheel drive.
Even if you
really
have
good
all-wheel
idea.
drive, right? I mean, all-wheel drive does not help you stop.
Exactly.
I mean, we can't reiterate that enough. It doesn't help you go around the corner without sliding off. It helps you get going. So snow tires are great. Minivans tend to be really good in the snow, especially with snow tires. So don't always think you have to get the all-wheel drive on those vehicles. In terms of the cost, yeah, absolutely. Siennas hold their value a lot more than the Chrysler minivans. But it really comes down to how much life is going to be left. And if you look at our reliability information, it does appear that if you're looking at a used Sienna, you're going to get a whole lot more life out of it than you would of that equivalent Chrysler minivan, and that's the reason why it's worth less.
I mean, the Town & Country, our predicted reliability shows well below average from 2008 to 2012 for that Chrysler Town Country. And so, I mean, you're taking a chance when you buy that thing.
Well, and the other way to do it, another way to look at it is that you could probably wind up with an older Sienna for a similar price to that Chrysler, and still get the same, cost of ownership, still get the same amount of repairs.
It would have more miles, and it would still has a good chance of lasting longer anyway.
That's exactly right.
When I saw this question, my first instinct was a front-wheel drive Sienna with good winter tires should be fine. A lot of times when people bring up all-wheel drive, I start asking them questions. Are you an emergency room surgeon? Are you a police officer? Are you a firefighter? You have the type of job where you have to be out on the road doing your thing regardless of the weather. And if not, forget about it. All-wheel drive is pretty much a waste of time, because where we live, if there's a hint of a snowstorm, the schools gets canceled. Yeah. Businesses shut down, and they don't reopen until the roads are clear. Yeah. So why are you wasting your money on all-wheel drive?
So focus on the snow tires.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, Mike, I think that's really, really good advice. And, I mean, so many people can telecommute now. So many people can just do that. And it's like, if it's a situation that you cannot get out on the roads and get going with snow tires and front-wheel drive, maybe you shouldn't be going out that day.
And people want more than they need. People buy more pickup truck usually than they need. Well, I might need it someday. So all-wheel drive, well, I might need it someday. You might, but chances are you probably won't.
Right. Okay. Let's get to another question here. This person says, and I think this is actually a really interesting one, why has Infiniti declined / cheapened their cars when they seem to have been on a roll 5+ years ago? And, if you look at our current data, there's only 2 Infinitis with above average reliability right now, and that's the Q70 and the QX50. So, Jake, what the heck is going on with Infiniti?
You're gonna have to ask Nissan, right? So, I mean, look, Nissan, right, is the parent company of Infiniti. Nissan and Infiniti, they made some decisions in their products. They tried to get less expensive. They tried to go up in volume. They tried to figure out how to get some cost out of the vehicles. And it's apparent with the reliability of Nissans, which we've seen for several years, where it just really has dropped to well below average, even for below average for the whole fleet on average. But yeah, Infiniti, they've taken the cost out of these vehicles. So in some ways, they've kind of upped some of the volumes, trying to make them more cost competitive, but it's a choice. So, I mean, if you're looking for, I mean, if you think about Nissan, I mean, again, go, Nissan Infiniti. You think about Nissan, the four-door sports car, right? These old Maximas from the 90s, that they're all still on the roads.
That car was so good.
Today's Nissan are not super reliable, and today's Infinitis are not that real sporty experience that you used to get with the Gs and the Ms.
It's such a shame.
Yeah, and I think about there hasn't been one automotive manufacturer over the last 10 or 15 years that has always been able to like keep their edge. There was a time when the E-Class was a great sedan. We're less enamored with the redesigned model. There was a time when BMW made everything that was great. The 5 Series of the early 2000s was one of the best cars ever. And then it went down. It wasn't as much fun. The controls got crazy. That there isn't one manufacturer.
And they're not as fun to drive
anymore.
anymore.
Lost the steering feedback.
And so Nissan is kind of following the similar trajectory. That's a hard word to say.
Well done.
I will say that I think the Rogue was a good effort. I think the current Q50, which we all still sometimes refer to as the G, I think that's a good effort. I think Nissan is showing some signs of life, but really they're just not as captivating as a brand as they used to be.
Well, so I mean, just to kind of hang on what you're talking about, I mean, you're right. There's ebbs and flows of all these automakers, and yeah, I mean, those some of the new Nissan products, they're okay, but they're not the top in the class. And what's interesting about it is that while these cars kind of go up and down as manufacturers, the perception of them sticks, and that's why you got to stay on the market, because like, I mean, we talk about Hyundai Kia, for instance. People are still thinking about 1985 Hyundai Excels, and it's like, no.
Move on.
Move on. They have changed. So some get better, some get worse, but it is a moving market.
Well, let's switch to another topic. We recently bought a 2017 Honda Civic Si. Now, this is the first Si to ever be turbocharged. So this is a big deal. I mean,
no, actually, lots of Sis have been turbocharged.
Just not by the factory.
Exactly, yeah.
So, we've already done a first drive on it, and we have a video up that actually generated a lot of response. And it's one of those cars, I think that the people who are most passionate about these cars are the ones who have owned them before. So, Mike, I actually want to start with you because I know you had a Honda Civic Si years ago, and I want to start with you to see what you think about this new car. Is it, in the Si vein?
Yeah, my first new car ever was a 1987 Honda Civic Si. Little 3-door hatchback, 5-speed manual. I didn't even get air conditioning. I put my own radio in it. It was the most amazing. I loved that car. So obviously I had high hopes for this new one. I had a chance to drive the new Si, and I got to say, I think Honda is like back to making really good engines. The 205 horsepower that this one produces is just, it comes on seamlessly. You hardly even know it's turbocharged. I thought it was responsive. I liked the shifter. I liked the steering. I liked the seats. Dismayed that it's lost its handbrake, which is always fun in a snowy parking lot. And of course the controls are horrible. There's no rotary tuning knobs, which drives me batty. But
this car's about the driving.
Other than that, I really like it. I like it a whole lot. And when we talk about comparing it to the hot Focuses and the GTI, I'm putting my money on the Civic Si, if not only for really good fuel economy, for probably pretty good reliability.
Yeah. Now it seems like SIs in the past were maybe a little more known for the engine than their handling. This one, I think, is more. It's really more about its handling than the engine. Would you agree with that, Jake? Or I mean, I don't think you and I talked a little bit before the show. I don't know if you're quite as high on the car as Mike is.
Well, I mean, look, I mean, first of all, reliability. The first year of the redesigned Civic has been below average. So, I mean,
he's always a downer.
No, Jake is right. That's a fair point. You kind of can't just ride on its reputation.
The reputation of Honda is great. But,
absolutely.
But what have you done for me lately? I mean, Honda's been a little bit spotty. I think they'll kind of work it out. I wouldn't be surprised next year they're going to get it together. But to me, it's like, look, the Civic really came a long way this last generation, okay? I mean, I think it's a much more grown-up car, feels much more substantial. They did a lot of things, right in terms of handling. This Si, to me, is kind of like a half step up. It's
Well,
not,
that's because you got the Civic Type R coming, so that's the full step.
Well, it is, and you're exactly right. So it's kind of like, it's almost like the Civic Sport. I mean, it's really kind of like a couple more horsepower. It doesn't feel substantially different from a normal Civic. Whereas I think the Si, and maybe the R is my car, I don't know,
Right.
but it's like they used to be more like, usually there was a different engine. And
Right.
the other thing about Si to me, and even just like Honda, what really meant is those normally aspirated non-turbo engines that just revved so effortlessly. And yeah, this car's got a lot of usable power, and it's pretty powerful.
And it's
but
happy revving a 6.
it's not as happy as
not-
SI's.
It's not as happy as
Yes,
it used to be.
but
let's
it's
put it
still
that way.
pretty good.
And to go,
Yeah.
I mean, think about the old Acura Integras, and the GSR, and just how that thing just revved so nice. And the old SIs, they just revved. And they used to have this, this VTEC where it's like, you get these high revs, and all of a sudden the thing takes off, and it feels like a motorbike engine. It just sounds so cool. You don't have this anymore. You kind of have normal. It's more of a GLI.
I think we're in a
than
new
it
we're,
is.
we're in a new world of turbos, and unfortunately, it's been proven that it's hard to get a turbo 4-cylinder to sound really, really good. It
But
can
why,
be done.
why would Honda take something like a sweet VTEC, that whole mentality, or maybe it's just
Fuel
the
economy.
label of VTEC,
Yeah.
and kind of like walk away from it?
But they were very fuel efficient. So I mean,
But they were unlike any other 4-cylinder out there, and now you don't you don't hear.
But I think
it's
there's.
gone.
I mean, my take is more broad stream appeal. Okay, the Si definitely is to a bigger market because you don't have to rev it so high. You don't have to work the gear so much.
It builds power from like 2,500.
Yeah.
You floor it, and it's actually got some power down
Yeah.
there.
You drive
Oh,
around
tons.
town, and you could be in third, you could be fourth, you could be fifth. It doesn't even matter. It used to be you kind of had to do it. So it's a broader appeal vehicle, just not as exciting when I drive.
Yeah, I found it. I agree with you to some extent on the engine that it's not as big of a power difference over the regular Civic as
It's like 180 to 205.
yeah,
I
which
think.
is so it's not a lot,
Right.
But it does sound better than the regular Civic Turbo, which really doesn't sound like much
You're
of
going to
anything.
change the exhaust anyway.
True.
Come on.
This does need more exhaust. You can hear the engine, you can't hear the exhaust too much. The seats are great. The steering is really sharp. But for $25,000, I mean, you're getting a car with adjustable suspension. You can change it, hit the sport button, and the suspension gets stiffer. The shocks get stiffer to the point that it's actually a little harsh to live with. But I mean, when you're on a back road, that's when the car really sharpens up. And I think.
Well, we talked about Honda noise before, and the new Si on the highway is not. It calms down. I mean, to your point, Jake. I mean, it's definitely more mainstream. But for me, at this stage of my life, it's just more livable. And I had to double check the window sticker of the car that we bought. I thought for about $25,000, you're getting heated seats, satellite radio. I thought it's a great value.
Really nice sports seats too.
Yeah.
I mean, those are really good bolsters to hold you in place through the turns. Decent shifter. It's a little.
I was already not to like it.
It's a little.
But I drove it. And I was like,
the shifter
I like this
is a
car.
little notchy right now, but it seems like it's like you told me it's already wearing in, which is good. But it's a
I
little
think with a couple of
plasticky-
miles, it's
plasticky
gonna-
sounding. Do you notice
it'll
that?
probably
Is
smooth.
plasticky a word? I don't know if that's a word. but-
It's a word now.
okay.
But the adjustable dampers, I don't know. Can't you just make the car handle and ride good? I mean, like you hit the button and the steering wheel gets really stiff to turn. Look, you get a Mazda. Give me a Mazda 3, not a Mazda 3 GT or anything special, but a normal Mazda 3. And you know what? It steers great. It handles great. It rides decently. It does it all well without the button and all the gimmicks.
Here's what I'll say. I was ready to not like the car that much either, and I took it out on some back roads, and it's really fun to drive. I mean, it's really, like I said, I think it's more about the handling right now, and that's what this car is all about. It's about getting you excited to go take it on a back road and have some fun through the turns. And from that perspective, I think they've done a good job. Like it's certainly not perfect. We'll wait and hopefully drive the Civic Type R and see if that is the car that you're looking for, and maybe
which probably is less broad street appeal and
Yeah.
probably
The
I'll
car that
complain
Jake's
about the
looking
ride.
for
You
is a
might hate that
10-year-old.
car.
I probably will hate that car.
The car
so.
Jake's looking for is a 10-year-old Mitsubishi Evo. So
I don't know, or maybe Acura Integra Type R. I don't know. So, but you talk about the value. Here's one thing it does not have. It does not have automatic emergency braking. It does not have forward collision warning. Not even available on this vehicle.
it's got the stupid Honda lane watch.
And
though.
right now, you can get those. You could get that equipment, right? AEB and FCW, automatic emergency braking and forward collision warning, on the cheapest Honda Civic. You could get it on that, but you can't get it on
let's
the
get
SI.
to that. On that point, we got some questions recently about that, and here's what some people said. They said, these are some viewers that said, Automatic braking is impossible in a manual-only car. And we're going to get to your response about this, Jake. And then another person says, it's important for people to know an automaker cannot put forward collision warning with automatic braking on a manual transmission vehicle. This would mean if those systems intervened on behalf of the driver, bringing the car to a full stop to avoid a collision, the car would stall. This is a liability issue for automakers since it takes steering and throttle away from the driver since the engine is stalled and off. Honda would love to make these features standard, but it's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And you know what? That's just simply not true. We've seen it in the Scion IA, which is now the Toyota Yaris IA. When it comes standard with automatic emergency braking, and when the system intervenes and slows the car to a stop, the car stalls, which is better than crashing.
Well, I mean, this is the internet rumor division, right? So I've seen these before. I mean, there's a certain amount of people that think the one that I liked was, this is going to be the death of the manual transmission now that we have automatic emergency braking.
It was dying long before automatic emergency braking.
Well, but it's simply not true. You can have these systems. There are cars out there that have these systems. The truth is, the way automatic emergency braking works, and if you've ever had this operating on you, what happens when all of a sudden it intervenes, you know what the driver does?
All in.
They're
all feet in.
Yeah, they slam on the clutch and they slam. So realistically, it's not going to stall. If for some reason it does its thing and you're completely unconscious, it'll stall. But if you're unconscious, you're
not paying attention.
And furthermore, I mean, the whole idea of that the engine stalls, it's like this horrible, horrible thing. Well, guess what? A lot of the cars that we have right now have engine cutoffs. So when you're idling, the engine goes off. And some of those cars, you can't steer so much. And then when you put some torque on it, restarts. It's just not. It's just not true. It will stop you. You could put it on manual transmission cars. That's not an excuse.
Well, hopefully we've cleared that up. That's going to do it for this episode. If you want to learn more about the cars that we talked about today, click on the links to the show notes below. And as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.